We're reading in Book 2, and last week we completed our reading of Canto 2, the Kingdom of Subtle Matter. This Book 2, this is the book of the Traveller of the Worlds. The Traveller of the Worlds is King Asvapati, who is in search of the principle, the cosmic principle that will be able to transform our earthly life here into a divine life. So for that, he is being driven or led to explore all the planes of existence. And the one closest to our own gross material plane, is the plane of subtle matter. Very, very beautiful physical perfection manifested there. This subtle matter. But Asvapati cannot remain satisfied with this. Our spirit tires of being surfaces. It turns to hidden powers and deeper states. So now he looked beyond for greater light. He has seen this world stare like a mountain of many, many levels, each representing plane of existence. So today he's moving on out of the kingdom of subtle matter into the life worlds. Canto 3 is called The Glory and the Fall of Life. We're on page 116. And I'm going to read a little more than usual today. There's a long introductory section, 90 lines. So I'm going to read that, and then we'll go back and look in more detail at this passage. King Asvapati has left the realm of subtle matter. An uneven, broad ascent now lured his feet. Answering a greater nature's troubled call, he crossed the limits of embodied mind and entered wide, obscure, disputed fields where all was doubt and change and nothing sure. A world of search and toil without repose. As one who meets the face of the unknown, a questioner with none to give reply, attracted to a problem never solved, always uncertain of the ground he trod, always drawn on to an inconstant goal. He traveled through a land peopled by doubts, in shifting confines on a quaking base. In front, he saw a boundary ever unreached, and thought himself at each step nearer now a far retreating horizon of mirage. A vagrancy was there that brooked no home, a journey of countless paths without a close. Nothing he found to satisfy his heart. A tireless wandering sought and could not cease. There, life is the manifest, incalculable, a movement of unquiet seas, a long and venturous leap of spirit into space, a vexed disturbance in the eternal calm, an impulse and passion of the infinite. Assuming whatever shape her fancy wills, escaped from the restraint of settled forms, she has left the safety of the tried and known. Unshepherded by the fear that walks through time, undaunted by fate that dogs and chance that springs, she accepts disaster as a common risk. Careless of suffering, heedless of sin and fall, she wrestles with danger and discovery in the unexplored expanses of the soul. To be seemed only a long experiment. The hazard of a seeking, ignorant force that tries all truths and finding none supreme, moves on, unsatisfied, unsure of its end. As saw some inner mind, so life was shaped. From thought to thought she passed, from phase to phase, tortured by her own powers, or proud and blessed, now master of herself, now toy and slave. A huge inconsequence was her action's law, as if all possibility must be drained, and anguish and bliss were pastimes of the heart. In a gallop of thunder-hooved vicissitudes, she swept through the race fields of circumstance. Or, swaying, she tossed between her heights and deeps, uplifted or broken on time's inconstant wheel. Amid a tedious crawl of drab desires, she writhed, a worm mid worms in nature's mud. Then, Titan-statured, took all earth for food, ambitioned the seas for robe, for crown the stars, and shouting strode from peak to giant peak, clamoring for worlds to conquer and to rule. Then, wantonly enamored of sorrow's face. She plunged into the anguish of the depths and wallowing clung to her own misery. In dolorous converse with her squandered self, she wrote the account of all that she had lost, or sat with grief as with an ancient friend. A romp of violent raptures soon was spent, or she lingered tied to an inadequate joy, missing the turns of fate, missing life's goal. A scene was planned for all her numberless moods, where each could be the law and way of life. But none could offer a pure felicity. Only a flickering zest they left behind, or the fierce lust that brings a dead fatigue. Amid her swift, untold variety, something remained dissatisfied, ever the same, and in the new saw only a face of the old. For every hour repeated all the rest, and every change prolonged the same unease. A spirit of herself and aim unsure, tired soon of too much joy and happiness. She needs the spur of pleasure and of pain, and the native taste of suffering and unease, unrest. She strains for an end that never can she win. A perverse savor haunts her thirsting lips. For the grief she weeps, which came from her own choice. For the pleasure yearns that racked with wounds her breast. Aspiring to heaven, she turns her steps towards hell. Chance she has chosen, and danger for playfellows. Fate's dreadful swing she has taken for cradle and seat. Yet, pure and bright from the timeless was her birth. A lost world rapture lingers in her eyes. Her moods are faces of the infinite. Beauty and happiness are her native right, and endless bliss is her eternal home. We are embarking now on a series of cantos which deal with different aspects of life. It's as if King Aswapati, leaving that world of subtle matter, has entered a life world which is very like the life that we know. It's a subtle world, it's not a material world like ours, but it has the characteristics of life as we experience it. But at the end of this section, Sri Aurobindo tells us that the true home of life, the true nature of life, is something divine. And all these different moods that life indulges in, they are all faces of the infinite. So there are 6 cantos devoted to life, and we're just embarking. This is an introductory passage about that. You will read, please, Martin?
From the beginning.
From the beginning, yes.
The glory and the fall of life. An uneven road ascent, now you to speak. Answering the greater nature's troubled call, he crossed the limits of embodied mind, then entered wide, obscure, disputed fields, where all was doubt and change and nothing sure. The world of search and toil without repose.
Yes. So Aswapati has just left the beautiful kingdom of subtle matter, which was full of beautiful forms and fixed perfection, but it was not satisfying to his soul, and he has to go further in his search. So his feet are lured, attracted by an uneven, broad ascent. He's starting to move up the stair of planes of existence. It's a broad path, it goes upwards, but it's uneven. It's not smooth and easy. King Aswapati is responding, answering to the call of a greater nature than the purely physical. But it's a troubled call. He goes beyond the boundaries, the limits of embodied mind. The material world embodies mind at the present state of evolution, and that subtle physical world also gave forms, embodied mind. But he's passing beyond those limitations. He enters wide fields, vast areas, but they are obscure, shadowy, difficult to see, and disputed. Different forces are quarreling about these territories which he enters now. There, everything was doubt and change, and nothing is sure. He had left that subtle physical world because everything was too sure, too easy. Now he's entered a realm where nothing is sure, a world of search and toil, without repose, without rest. In that way, it is similar to our world. Our world is also a world of search and toil, without much repose. No. Anybody wants to ask anything? Corinne, will you read?
As one who meets the face of the unknown, the questioner with none to give reply, attracted to a problem and solved, always uncertain of the ground trod, always drawn onto a constant goal. He travels through a land peopled by doubts, and shifting confines in a quick pace.
Yes. So, he's facing the unknown, moving into unknown territory. He's full of questions, but there's no one to answer him. He's being attracted to a problem not yet solved, never yet solved. And as he moves, he's always uncertain of the ground he's treading on. He's exploring, and it's not firm ground. It's not matter, no. He's exploring in the spaces of the soul. He's uncertain. He can't rely on the ground that he treads on as he moves. But he's being drawn on, attracted to a goal, but that goal seems to be always shifting, inconstant. It's not always in the same place. He's traveling through a land which is peopled by doubts, full of doubt. And its borders are changing in shifting confines. Confines are limits, boundaries, frontiers. They are shifting, they're always moving. And the base is quaking, shaking, like an earthquake or like quicksand or something. He can't be sure of his footing. Kamala, would you read?
In front is a boundary ever unreached, and thought himself a deep step nearer now, a far retreating horizon of mirage. A vagrancy was there that would no home, a journey of countless paths without a close. Nothing he found could satisfy his heart. A tireless wandering thought and could not
Cease. Thank you. So this happens to people sometimes in the desert, no, or at sea. They see a horizon and they think they're getting nearer to it, but it just retreats further and further. So he saw a boundary, but he never reaches it. He thinks he's getting nearer with each step, but it's a far retreating horizon of mirage. Mirage are these optical illusions we get in the desert or at sea, and we think there are trees or a city, but it's just some kind of reflection in the air, something unreal. It's always moving away. In this fields that he's exploring now, there was a vagrancy. A vagrant is a person who doesn't have a home, who doesn't have a fixed abode. It's illegal in some countries. If you don't have a fixed abode, then you're a criminal. Here, this vagrancy is a state. It doesn't allow anything to have any home. To brook means to allow, to permit. It doesn't allow any home. So what is happening there is a journey of countless paths without a close. None of them come to an end. He found nothing to satisfy his heart. And then he feels this urge of tireless wandering, seeking, and he can't cease seeking because he doesn't find what he's looking for. I'm sorry, you have to remind me of your name.
Prashant.
Prashant, thank you. Would you read, please? Line 21.
Their life is the manifest incalculable, a movement of unquiet seas, a long and venturous leap of spirit into space, a vexed disturbance in the eternal calm, an impulse and passion of the infinite.
In that realm, life is incalculable. Life is incalculable for us too. We think that we can rely on it, but it's always giving us surprises. But there, it's the manifest incalculable, the unexpected and unpredictable manifest. It's like a movement of unquiet seas, stormy seas. Or Sri Aurobindo says it's a long and venturous leap, a very adventurous, daring leap the spirit has taken into space. A vexed disturbance in the eternal calm. Vexed means troubled, irritated, annoyed. A disturbance in the eternal calm. There shouldn't be any disturbance, no? But life gives that disturbance. It's an impulse and a passion, an intense feeling of the infinite. And then Sri Aurobindo starts to refer to life, to this life force, as she, as a goddess. Sarojini, you'll read.
Assuming whatever said mere fancy goals, escape from the restraint of subtle forms, she has left the safety of the triad and known.
Unshepherded
by the fear that walk through time,
undaunted
by fate that dogs and chance that brings, she accepts this disaster as a common risk, careless of suffering, heedless of sign and
of sin
and fall. She restless with danger and discovery in the
explored
experiences of the soul.
Yes. So she, the life force, the life goddess, she can put on whatever shape she wants. She's not restricted to any particular appearance or form. She's completely escaped from the restraint of settled forms, which is there in our world and which is there in the world of subtle physical matter. She's escaped from that kind of restriction. She's left the safety of the tried and known. Everything is unexpected. Unshepherded. A shepherd is somebody who looks after sheep or goats. No? And a person who's in charge of a flock of sheep has to be very careful to keep them together, no, and keep them out of danger. Usually he has some dogs to help him do that. No? So for us, in our world and our process through time, one of the things that keeps us in order and prevents us from straying like lost sheep is fear. But she has no fear. She's unshepherded by that fear that walks through time. She's undaunted. It also means to be daunted means you feel worried and anxious and fearful. She's not fearful at all about fate, even though fate seems to follow us like a faithful dog at our heel. And the other thing that always seems to be threatening us is chance. Unexpectedly, chance will come and upset all our plans and expectations. No? She's not bothered about that at all. She accepts disaster as a common risk. She's careless of suffering. She doesn't care about it. She's heedless. It also means careless. She doesn't pay attention. She doesn't think about sin, the possibility of the soul's fall. She wrestles. She's battling with danger and discovery in the unexplored expanses of the soul. So this is where her adventure is going on, in the subjective inner spaces, not in our outer material world. Ganga Lakshmi, would you read? Yes.
You started this, the story was in the narrative with him.
Yes.
And then it started.
Now it's gone to she. Yes.
Why is that?
Yes. I'm going to repeat a little joke of Dr. Nadkarni's. He said there are 3 very difficult words in Savitri: he, she, and it. It's always difficult to know. So I tried to give some guidance by saying that the he in the first part, this is Aswapati. And then the poet is telling us about life. And at first he spoke in general, impersonal terms. But now he started referring to life as she, the life force, the life goddess. It's clear? Yeah? Thank you.
It's me, Shraddhavan.
Yes, it's your turn.
Okay. To be seen.
To be seemed only.
Only a long experiment. The hazard of the seeking ignorant force. That tries all truths and finding none supreme. Move on, unsatisfied, unsure of its own.
Yes. So to be, to exist, existence itself seems to be only an experiment that goes on and on and on and on. You don't reach any conclusion. This life of ours, this existence of ours, seems to depend on the hazard, the chance decisions or behavior of a seeking, ignorant force that doesn't know what it's doing. Hazard means risking things, taking risks, not knowing what will be the outcome. So this seeking, ignorant force doesn't know where it's going or what it's doing, so it tries all truths, and it's not satisfied with any of them It doesn't find any of them to be supreme. So it just moves on, unsatisfied, unsure of its end, not knowing where it is going. I think we can recognize this description of life as we experience it. Joel, would you read?
As some eager mind, so life was shaped. From thought to thought she passed, from face to face, tortured by her own powers, all proud and blessed. No master of herself, no toy and slave.
So we're in the worlds of life. But there are forms and movements there, and there is mind there. Life's movements are guided, perhaps, shaped, he says, by the action of some inner mind, according to what that inner mind sees and decides. So the life was shaped. And she passes from thought to thought, from one phase to another phase. Sometimes she's tortured by her own powers. Sometimes she feels proud and blessed and everything is wonderful. Now she's the master of herself and everything around. But sometimes she's like a toy, a plaything of fate, or a slave. Dana.
A huge inconsequence was her actions, Lord, as if all possibility must be present, and anguish and bliss the pastimes of the heart.
Inconsequence. It means there's no order, there's no sequence. This has happened, so the next thing must happen. Inconsequence. A huge inconsequence seems to be the law of her action. Everything is unpredictable. And it's as if she has to drink up all possibility, experience it to the full. So whether it is anguish, intense pain, or bliss, intense delight, all this is just kind of pastime, an amusement, a way of spending time.
So this would mean the actions that did not have any fruit.
That's a matter of whim and caprice. There's no order or reason or anything like that. The unpredictability of life. Sorry?
The opposite of the last chapter, no?
Yes, it's just the opposite. Yes. Yeah. So now he's going to give examples of that, this inconsequence. Amrita.
In a gallop of thunder-hoofed vicissitudes, she swept through the race heats of circumstances. Persuading, she took first meeting your hearts and deeds, uplifted or broken, sometimes inconscient.
Yes. Vicissitudes. Those are the unexpected things that pop up in life. You think you know exactly what you're going to do this morning or tomorrow morning, and then something comes in the way and stops you. Challenges, unexpected happenings. So sometimes it's as if she's riding a wild horse on a gallop of thunder-hooved vicissitudes, one unpredictable happening after another, sweeping through the race fields of circumstance, one circumstance after another. Or another way of expressing it, he says, it gives the image of something like a tree that's being blown by a very strong wind. So it's tossing one way and the other way. She's swaying, tossed between her heights and her deeps, uplifted or broken on time's inconstant wheel. This is a very common image in European sacred art of the wheel of time. And sometimes it lifts you up and you're on top of the world, but then it brings you down and crushes you. Uplifted or broken on time's inconstant wheel. It never stays still. It's always moving. Young, would you read, please?
Beneath our failures cold of their desires, she deeply
Writhed.
the warm warmth in nature's love. When icon statues took all earth for food, ambition pursues for war, for ground was past, and shouted strong from peak dry feet, clamoring for words to conquer and to rule.
These are these shifts of mood, no? Sometimes she's seems to be quite content to move about like a worm in nature's mud, through a tedious crawl of drab desires, muddy, trivial amusements, writhing, wriggling like a worm in the midst of other worms, in the mud, the sticky mud and dirt of nature, lower levels of nature. But then she changes, no? Then suddenly she's Titan-statured like a gigantic being. She demands the whole earth for her food. She wants to take all the oceans, wrap them around herself for robe, wear the stars in the sky as a crown. Shouting, she strode from one mountain peak to the next, to the next, to the next, clamoring for worlds to conquer and to rule. The Rakshasic movement. Rakshasic. And then there's another shift, Kavita. Line 56.
Then, one only enamored of sorrow's haze, she plunged into the anguish of the depths, and wallowing, clung to her own misery.
Continue.
Dolorous converse with her squandered self, she wrote the account of all that she had lost, or sat with grief as with an ancient friend.
So sometimes she's shouting and striding about. Other times, it's as if for no reason at all, she falls in love with sorrow, wantonly enamored, just like that, for no reason. She plunges into the anguish of the depths, the sorrow, wallowing like pigs or hippopotamuses in sticky mud. She rolls around, clinging to her own misery. We can watch ourselves doing this sometimes. We get absolutely absorbed in self-pity and don't want to let it go. If somebody comes and wants to cheer us up, we don't want to listen at all. because we are wallowing in our misery. So in sorrowful converse, as if she's got a close friend and she can pour out all her woes in dolorous converse with her own squandered self, this self that she has wasted. To squander, it means to waste. She wrote the account of all that she had lost, all the wonderful things that have slipped out from her grasp, or sat with grief as with an ancient friend. Will you read? Yes.
A round of violent raptures soon was spent, or she lingered, trying to an inadequate joy, missing the turns of fate, missing life's home. A scene was planned for all the numberless modes, where each could be the law and ways of life, but none could offer a pure felicity.
Yes?
Only a flickering zest they left behind, or the fierce lust that brings a dead fatigue.
Yes. A romp. This is what kids do, no? Violent play. So much fun. A romp of violent raptures. Rapture is intense delight. Sometimes we can take intense delight in something that's like a combat almost. No? But soon she gets tired of that. On the other hand, she may linger for a long time, unnecessarily tied to a joy which is inadequate, not satisfying at all. We can find ourselves doing this in life too, not moving on, too lazy to move on. And in that way, she misses, and we miss, the turns of fate, the things that would have helped us progress, missing life's goal. So in this realm, a scene was planned for all her numberless moods, as if there's a scene, a theatre, and all of her numberless moods, each of them can be played out in turn. Each could be the law and way of life. She can play them all out, all her dramas, but none of them offer a pure felicity, a pure delight. Only they leave behind a flickering zest. A zest is a sharp taste like we get from lemons. It's like a little flame flickering, that taste comes. Not much. Or that fierce lust, that craving that brings a dead fatigue. So these are all many of the different moods of life Asvapati is observing. I think we will have to stop there for today.
Canto 3. The Glory and the Fall of Life. An uneven, broad ascent now lured his feet. Answering a greater nature's troubled call, he crossed the limits of embodied mind and entered wide, obscure, disputed fields where all was doubt and change, and nothing sure, a world of search and toil without repose. As one who meets the face of the unknown, a questioner with none to give reply, attracted to a problem never solved, always uncertain of the ground he trod, always drawn on to an inconstant goal. He travelled through a land peopled by doubts, in shifting confines, on a quaking base. In front he saw a boundary ever unreached, and thought himself at each step nearer now, a far retreating horizon of mirage. A vagrancy was there that brooked no home, a journey of countless paths without a close. Nothing he found to satisfy his heart. A tireless wandering sought and could not cease. There, life is the manifest incalculable, a movement of unquiet seas, a long and venturous leap of spirit into space, a vexed disturbance in the eternal calm, an impulse and passion of the infinite. Assuming whatever shape her fancy wills, escaped from the restraint of settled forms, she has left the safety of the tried and known. Unshepherded by the fear that walks through time, undaunted by fate that dogs and chance that springs, she accepted disaster as a common risk. Careless of suffering, heedless of sin and fall, she wrestles with danger and discovery in the unexplored expanses of the soul. To be seemed only a long experiment, the hazard of a seeking, ignorant force that tries all truths and finding none supreme, moves on unsatisfied, unsure of its end. As saw some inner mind, so life was shaped. From thought to thought she passed, from phase to phase, tortured by her own powers, or proud and blessed, now master of herself, now toy and slave. A huge inconsequence was her action's law, as if all possibility must be drained, and anguish and bliss were pastimes of the heart. In a gallop of thunder-hooved vicissitudes, she swept through the race fields of circumstance. Or, swaying, she tossed between her heights and deeps, uplifted or broken on time's inconstant wheel. Amid a tedious crawl of drab desires, she writhed, a worm mid worms, in nature's mud. Then, Titan-statured, took all earth for food, ambitioned the seas for robe, for crown the stars, and shouting strode from peak to giant peak, clamouring for worlds to conquer and to rule. Then, wantonly enamoured of sorrow's face, she plunged into the anguish of the depths, and wallowing clung to her own misery. In dolorous converse with her squandered self, she wrote the account of all that she had lost, or sat with grief as with an ancient friend. A romp of violent raptures soon was spent, or she lingered tied to an inadequate joy, missing the turns of fate, missing life's goal. A scene was planned for all her numberless moods, where each could be the law and way of life. But none could offer a pure felicity. Only a flickering zest they left behind, or the fierce lust that brings a dead fatigue.